So obtaining a license, again, just in a nutshell, you need to satisfy quite a large number of, if you're an operator, quite a large number of requirements. I can tell you that iGaming just provided the license documents last week, and we're talking about boxes and boxes that needed to be shipped to and be assessed. So there's quite a lot that needs to be done. In a way, it's creating a whole new product. We're not used to do that in our industry of kind of communicating with governments, with taxation, with all those things. So there's a lot of requirements, financial, operationals, that we need to meet. The authority that was commissioned for that is known as ARGEL. So that's the Autorité de Régulation des Jeux en Ligne. And it's an independent public authority, and that's a name that you need to know if you want to take any part of the business in France. ARGEL are the main authority there. So what are their responsibilities? So obviously they need to monitor the compliance with the objective of the law. So there is a law, but the law, as we said, there's a spirit to the law and there's the objectives, and that's ARGEL task to make sure that everything that happens within the law complies with the spirit of it. And then the next task was to establish the requirements for the license, which was a bit tricky because specifically for poker, they didn't really have a clue. So it was a process of understanding on their end and also pushing on our end. What are the questions that we have? What are the answers that we expect? There's a lot of things that we're just not clear, but we're getting there. So they need to establish the requirement, which they did, and then they're in the process of reviewing applications, which I started doing basically last week. And then granting the licenses, obviously renewing the licenses. And the licenses are granted for 5 years, and then there's a renewal option. They need two auditors. Once you're licensed, they are in charge of auditing the operator's compliance with the law. Now, it is important to read that as auditing the operators. The main thing to understand is that operators are the ones holding the license. Operators are the ones contracting and collaborating with all kinds of other service providers, but the operators are being held accountable. We'll talk about it in a second. It's very important to make that switch and remember that you work with a licensed operator now. They will be part of fighting against non-licensed operator, illegal sites and fraud. That's probably what we are seeing also in Italy, where those that are not regulated are being blocked and being suspended and all kinds of things like that. And the next thing that they need to do will be to propose changes and modification to the law. And we're talking about a year and a half, so 18 months from now, that's where they'll open the law, they'll review it, and obviously there will be changes there. So there's a longer list of what are those requirements that an applicant needs to have, namely establishing presence or having operation established in France, being part of an EU country, etc. But bottom line is that ARGEL is now operating. They are, actually I don't even think that they have their official website yet. The site that, if you go online, you'll see it's called pre-ARGEL. That's the site that is actually there. Kind of tricky. But the bottom line is that they are working now, they're starting to accept applications. When they're going to actually give those licenses, still unknown. I think that the most important part specifically for poker now is understanding what it means to offer poker in France right now. So first of all, we need to create a separate platform. So all those brands that you know right now and all the liquidity and all those powers that you know and used to from our industry, that could change right now. Why? Because we are isolating France from the rest of the world. So there needs to be a separate platform restricted just for French residents, and the access needs to be through a top-level domain that has a .fr ending. That's a very easy must. So everspoker.com will no longer be accessible to French players. It will have to be everspoker.fr. All wagers must be offered in euro. So some of the operators already have that, others don't, but now it can only be in euro. And for poker specifically, they are subject to a $2 tax calculated on the total wagered amount. And it's processed by the operator, so it's their responsibility to take care of that. Players are required to provide personal information. This is something that is going to be tricky and can impact a lot of the process of becoming a poker player. So right now when they register, obviously this is a regulated environment, so you'll see the older than 18 signs everywhere. People will need to enter their date of birth whenever they log in, all kind of restrictions like that. But they will definitely need to provide real and accurate information, including their date of birth and all those things that are usually asked by operators. And the most important thing is the RIB, their personal banking identification. It's like a series of numbers. Every French resident that has a bank account should have that, and they need to submit that. From the moment they do that, they have 30 days in which their account is in temporary status. What does it mean? Temporary status means that they have all kinds of restrictions, namely that they can only deposit until a certain capped amount. Here's the tricky part, what I started with. Right now, we don't even know what that capped amount is. So there's that guessing of 200 euros, 100 euros, 250 euros. We don't really know that, and we are pretty much ready to switch a button when we get the license. So this is kind of tricky, one of those gray areas, one of those unknowns that the operators need to deal with. So there's all kind of numbers floating in the air. Obviously, people are restricted from cashing out at this point. When they, and if they, and that's a big if they actually submit all those documents within 30 days, their account, well, those documents will be reviewed by the operators, their account will then be upgraded into a permanent status, and then all those restrictions will be lifted. Another thing to keep in mind is that deposits are available right now through e-wallets, credit cards, pretty much the same thing that are offered right now. Withdrawals can only be made via bank transfers. So that's part of controlling the business, part of making sure that everybody collects taxes, etc. Players will need to only get their funds through their banks. Everything will be in euro. The party-in rate is actually important, and I touched on it a little bit, but it's really important to stress this out. Licensees are held accountable for complying with all different kind of regulations. So there's the law, that's one thing, okay? That's something that is maybe more technical and is enforced through the operators. But there's a lot of other things that we're not really used to in this industry. For example, the advertising code in France. I don't know how many people you are from France or operate in France right now, but there's a very elaborate advertising code over there. There are things that you cannot and can say. I cannot say that Everest Poker is the best poker room in the world, because that's illegal to say. I can actually get fined, or, well, we don't really know what are the measures that can be taken against us, but it will be illegal to say that. It's illegal to compare. It's illegal to do all kind of things. It also touches on our ability to run certain promotions. For example, leaderboards are said to be illegal according to the French law. And we're talking about different laws. We're talking about also commercial laws. Everything needs to be taken into consideration. So that is important. And that will be, I think, the biggest obstacle. Again, we're not used to that in our industry. It doesn't come automatically, and we don't really know. So if you're not an operator, you need to kind of bear with us a little bit, because we are learning this as we go. And it will be a pretty challenging time, at least in the first few months.